My name's Jessica Halliday and I'm the director of the Festival of Transitional Architecture in Christchurch. FESTA is an event that is about to go into its third iteration. We started in 2012 and we happen for the 4 days over Labor weekend, starting on the Friday night and finishing on the Monday evening. FESTA responds to and examines and expands this new culture of transitional urbanism that's emerged in Christchurch post-earthquake. We endeavour to create a critical mass of activity, projects and events over those 4 days and create the conditions for greater collaboration and involvement in the transitional city for all kinds of people. So we run multiple events and projects over the weekend. In 2012 we had about 20. In our first year, in 2013, we went to 48. And they might be transitional projects themselves, or they might be events that talk about the transitional. And they're generated by a huge range of people, individuals, organisations, artists, architects, designers, gardeners, ordinary members of the public. Sometimes government organisations or local government. And it's as if for one very brief weekend, we invite the whole city and her visitors to take part in the making of Christchurch, even if it's only for one weekend. So why a festival? Why should we, with Bree and Barnaby, have introduced this whole culture to you? But why should we make a festival about it? So Bree's already introduced this project, and she's mentioned this idea too. This is a unique cultural movement. It's very much of this place. And I think, as a historian, so I'm an architectural historian, that's my background, that in a place whose sense of self has been so severely shaken, excuse the pun, that we need to acknowledge and to celebrate and to critically examine this new vernacular that we've established post-earthquake. And recognise how vital it is that this new form of cultural practice is making in the city and rejuvenating Christchurch's identity with this new, accessible, diverse, emergent, creative practice. So Bree introduced Gatfilla's Rad Bike Shed Recycle Danga, which was launched as part of the festival last year. They take old bikes that other people have rejected. I love this idea as an architectural historian because, of course, the Danga is a reference to Jerry Brownlee's famous statement early in late February, early March 2011, that heritage architecture was all those old buildings were Dangas. And demonstrating that there is value in this and that you can create a community of people around this kind of transitional project. So it's a little shed that's transportable, it's equipped to repair bikes. So we seek to celebrate and to extend this cultural practice. Gatfilla, of course, were at the vanguard of establishing this kind of urbanism in Christchurch. The festival also serves to bring the whole community together in one event. And so in 2012, we went from the official top-down transitional architecture, so this is the transitional stadium which Barnaby also showed you. We had one of the architects from Populous who designed it come and talk to us about the project. So the public could actually come and hear a talk by the designer about the work of architecture, not just go to a game there, but hear about how it came into being. But then we also invited a local performance group, musicians, the Silencio Ensemble, who took a vacant site, brokered by... Oh, actually no, that's one of the rare ones that wasn't brokered by life in vacant spaces, but we were lucky. We had a good landowner who said, yeah, just do it, because it was for like a couple of hours. And they made these amazing sort of standards with tubular bells, and they had speakers and road cones, and they had this sort of bizarre performance on a vacant site where there's so much demolition still happening in the city. There was still a red zone in the city in 2012, a bit of the city you couldn't go into. And they created this unusual performance that investigated sort of spatial experience via sound. So we go from, these musicians who've never done anything like this before, right up to the architects who work for the government. We, work with those who are already deeply involved in transitional urbanism and those who've never done it before, who work with volunteers and members of the public and who invite people into the city. This is one of my favourite events that we've held. Nature Play Space is a project that Greening the Rubble did with the Department of Conservation. So they initiated the project. We just held an event there DOC held an event there as part of our festival. So Greening the Rubble are an organisation that emerged about the same time as Gap Villa after the September earthquake, and they make pop-up parks. And they collaborated with DOC on this site to create sort of a natural playground for children to investigate. And during FESTA, DOC hosted this incredible Meet the Bugs event where kids were invited. And it was one of the most moving experiences of my life on the day, in a hurry, trying to check on every project and every event, walking across the city, which is empty and full of emotion and memory and history. You can feel it. And I walked through the East Frame, which is a highly contested part of inner city Christchurch, where the government has bought up this whole block of land that stretches from the river south, is it 6 or 5, 7 blocks south, and some of that land they've acquired via compulsion, but they've compulsorily acquired some of this land. It's full of emotion, and this project's on that site, on one of those sites. And so I was walking towards the project to check on it, and there's everywhere you go in Christchurch there's a sense of loss and memory that doesn't leave. And I turned to the corner, and then all of a sudden on this beautiful site are 50 children, and you don't understand how rare it is to see 50 children in the inner city in Christchurch in one place. And they're playing, and they're like, they get to hold wetters and have this really unusual experience together, and their parents are just gathering around and talking. And so, it's such a privilege to be able to support and host such an event. We work with artists and designers who want to revive or reinvent old ideas or try new ones. On the left, a Brazilian architect who's based in Christchurch, works for a local practice, Fabricio Fernandes, developed this nomadic sauna, which he first tested in Littleton with Gap Villa. We revived it on a vacant site in the inner city, again in the East Frame, on Manchester Street. And for 3 nights over the festival, you could have a sauna, and people told me it was in this little tent. They told me it was one of the most bizarre experiences of their life. The city's dark. There's nothing to do. Well, there's very little to do in this part of the city at night. And you could go and, in the changing rooms on the left, take your clothes off, put your togs on, whatever it was you were going to enter the sauna in, and then you enter, and there's 12 people, some of whom you might know, some of whom you might not know, and you're having a sauna, and Fabricio's talking you through it, making sure every 10 minutes, you're all okay. And my partner who went, I didn't get to go because I was too busy, but he's not one for sort of overstatement. He said it was nearly transcendent, nearly a transcendent experience. He came out glowing, his skin looked beautiful. And on the right, Makeshift, a little duo of an artist and an interior architect, took a former billboard trailer and had a local artist, Miranda Parks, paint it for them, and it's a little cinema for 2 on wheels. And over the festival, I had as an architectural historian, this is not surprising, I had this knowledge and desire to curate it so that it was placed on the sites of former cinemas, and there used to be 21 cinema screens in the central city, and that was part of makeshift thinking as well when they conceived the project. And so we moved it from former cinema site to former cinema site over 4 days. And it was really beautiful. They curated a lovely program of national and international short films. So you could just turn up for a koha, watch a short film in a place that now has one cinema with 48 seats. So yeah, beautiful project. We also get, the festival also allows us to curate and facilitate contributions of those from outside Christchurch to take part in what's happening there. Barnaby organised this amazing symposium called Urban Tactics that had people from Melbourne, Wellington, Canada contribute. And a lot of them, in fact, all of them, except maybe one, made their own way to the city, so they give to us as well in this whole process. So they were able to talk about their own projects and experiences of working tactically in the urban realm, and to share that knowledge with each other and with the audience in Christchurch, and gave us in Christchurch an opportunity to see how the kind of practice we're doing, which is kind of unique to us, actually does fit within a wider contemporary global practice. On the right, artist and architect Byron Kinner ran a drawing workshop, so he's based in Melbourne now, but he came and ran this wonderful workshop where people got to draw their ideas and visions of the city and work together. It was, again, a really beautiful project. So the festival does act as a way for international and national contributions to the city. So if any of you want to participate, you can come talk to me afterwards. And then we have one big project every year, in addition to all those other smaller events and projects. And in fact, FESTA was the brainchild of a few people. George Parker, who works with Free Theatre Christchurch, Stuart Candy, who's a futurist. There were a few people who had this idea that Christchurch should have a festival to celebrate the culture that's happening there. But we would never have happened if it weren't for a guy at Uwe Riga who teaches architecture at the University of Auckland, had this concept for a big project. And as soon as those sorts of things came together, people had, you should have a festival, and then someone actually proposed an amazing project. That's it, we were off. So in a matter of months, with virtually no funding, someone gave us $7,000, the Todd Foundation kicked us off, and then 3 weeks before we opened, no, 4 weeks before we opened, we had our first lot of funding, and then 3 weeks before we opened, we had our second lot of funding, and 1 day before we opened, we had the last tiny little offering. So it happened in an incredible rush. But Uwe Riga has established something called Studio Christchurch, is where a whole lot of architecture and design schools get to collaborate on studios, on a design studio in relation to Christchurch. And so Uwe for many years has run a one-to-one fabrication studio or studios in Auckland and collaborated with the design and architecture schools there. This was his first event that he'd done outside Auckland. And so he brought together 350 design and architecture students from across New Zealand, from 5 different institutions. They, between them, made 16 different projects, so 16 studios, 16 projects, which we, with the help of Life and Vacant Spaces, because it was just when Life and Vacant Spaces was coming into being, who negotiated all the vacant sites for us. We put them in 15 sites on Gloucester Street, Manchester Street and Worcester Street. Now, at the time, we still had a red zone in the central city. So Gloucester Street was the only street that was open and bisected the red zone into 2. So completely dark, demolitions happening, public's excluded. We've been excluded at this point for 18 months from our city. These 16 projects, most of them are at an urban scale, so they're the height of a building. And because there are 15 or 16 of them, we cross several city blocks. We matched, they sit there, they all use light as their principal medium. That's what the instruction they were given, to use light and design with light. And they sat there glowing against this dark background of the red zone. We FESTA matched up each of the studios with a local arts organisation or a hospitality business, or sometimes both, who operated in and around these installations. And the idea was that we were creating a city made from light for one night. So nothing, sure there are some small transitional projects, but you'd never go into the city and you're excluded from it. And then for one night, we invited Christchurch to come back and experience the illusion of a city for one night. Fledge, who Bree mentioned, worked with one studio. Some of them were beautifully interactive, so they actually involved the public in the making of the project. But this is what happened. 30,000 people turned up in one night, and we were completely overwhelmed. And it felt like the whole city was reclaiming Christchurch, the inner city, for the first time since the earthquake. It was completely overwhelming. And then last year, Free Theatre, George Parker, who's one of the founders of FESTA, and he's works with and has been with Free Theatre for many years. Free Theatre is one of the oldest experimental theatre companies, the oldest in New Zealand. They've been around for 35 years. They came up with this project called Canterbury Tales. And it built on Luxity. It had some of the same elements, working with design and architecture students to create installations, but most of it was based on performance. So Free Theatre designers made these incredible large-scale puppets, and there were performances on each of the sites. And again, we worked with bars and cafes and a night market as well. That gives you a view of some of these incredible puppets that were the size and scale of buildings, many of them. They did work again with design and architecture students who made installations. This one was the first international contribution. We've had UTS in Sydney. And it completely changed, this carnival completely changed the atmosphere of the city. So it was held, for those of you who know Christchurch, along Oxford Terrace and up Worcester Boulevard into the square. And that was a really important idea for Free Theatre. One of the criticisms they have of the city and its path is that it isn't a clean slate. This is a place that's still full of memory and history and meaning for people. And that's one of the things they were getting at, is they wanted to tell tales of Canterbury with this event. They also wanted to suggest that architecture and design and the making of a city should be built around the rituals of people coming together. And it did, of course, have a really strong satirical element as well, with all the puppets. So just to wind up, the festival gives, I think, a reason for thousands of people to gather in a place that they don't normally get together anymore. For us to continue this creation of a public even, via shared public experience in public space, often in some of the most contested spaces in the city, where the public have often been marginalised in the top-down efforts to rebuild Christchurch, central city Christchurch. And just to finish with an invitation, although it's a little bit late, we've started preparations for FESTA 2014 under the title The Future Will Be Live. Our call for proposals actually closed on Friday, but if you have got a project or an idea, you can speak to me afterwards. Also, for those of you who are really interested in learning more about Christchurch and its transitional culture, come down Labour Weekend, 24th to the 27th of October. You can book your tickets